This is a story of boy meets girl, but you should know up front, this is not a love story, is a quote from the 2009 film 500 Days of Summer. And it's true, the story isn't much of a romance despite it being about a romantic relationship between two people. It's about people trying to understand what love even looks like, what it feels like, getting it right and wrong, the whole wonky ordeal. Romance or not, the experience of love changes the characters forever. And that is my favorite type of story. Whether it's platonic or familial or between friends or between partners, whatever it is, I feel like our ancestors have been trying to figure this out since like the beginning of times. Even after we've developed thousands and thousands of languages, it's still so hard to capture, and it's still something that we find intriguing in stories. We could read the same love trope over and over again. It's the one thing that I think truly moves us in stories, and maybe not just in stories, but in life too. It's something that's always going to be continuously intriguing and a puzzle that we can't always really figure out. I have some books in mind that I think explore love really well, and I don't just mean romantic love, as I said before. I mean also love between friends and family, but also, of course, romantic love too. I also just want to say it up front that a lot of these books don't have happy endings, and maybe that's why they don't necessarily fit into the romance genre, or even as a comedy or a feel-good book. They explore love, but it doesn't always have to end in the best way. But I think these books are still worth reading. Also, most of the books that I'm putting out there, love isn't necessarily the storyline. It's not necessarily what moves the plot, but it's an important part to the plot. Even if the book is about something else entirely, it's love that kind of connects it and interweaves? Am I forgetting English? Anyways, it's love is like a string through the plot. It's a huge part of the characters' motivations and the characters' lives, and it's the backbone of the story, even if that's not what the story is about, is what I'm trying to tell you. Now, there's this author that I only started reading last year, and I wish I started reading her sooner because her work is written so well. I want to take in every single sentence that I'm reading. Every single sentence has a lot of meaning and a lot of emotional impact behind it. I want to literally absorb the words. So this is a story about a woman who is in her 30s, I believe it's her early 30s, and she's a copy editor, a freelance copy editor in Tokyo, and she doesn't really interact with people. She mostly works at home, and the only person she really interacts with is her editor, who is another woman in her 30s, and later in the story she starts interacting with a man in his 50s. The protagonist finds it extremely hard to develop relationships with other people. She's very much sunk into her own life. She even views herself as someone who's devoid of life, and doesn't really know how to get back to it, doesn't know how to enjoy her relationships with others. And this is mostly due to very painful memories from the past that really hindered her from being able to make connections in her life in the present day. And then with her own strength and also the influence of the very few interpersonal relationships in her life, she slowly but surely opens herself up to another life, one where she can enjoy the relationships that she has with others. And this book is All the Lovers in the Night by Mieko Kawakami. After I finished reading this book, I felt a sense of catharsis because I think for myself, I could relate a lot to the main character and how she struggled to make friends with people, and all of that was such a mental block for her. But it's really interesting how love works in this situation where it's love for oneself, but also having some few positive relationships in our lives and how that can transform us. So I highly recommend this book. It's one of my absolute favorites. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. This next book is a book that you should read in the winter when it's cold and crisp outside and you want to curl up in a sweater and drink a hot chocolate. Oh, and there's gotta be snow outside. There's gotta be snow outside. You should not read this book if there is no snow outside. This book takes place in Alaska, and it's a story about a couple in their 50s who recently moved there, but are also finding it hard to really integrate into their life in Alaska. They're also suffering from the grief of not being able to have a child despite really wanting one, and because of that, they also grew up hurt in their marriage. And then one day, in this moment of softness, they go out into the snow and they play together in the snow, and they build a snow child, and they dress it up, give her a scarf or something, I think. And then the next day they look outside and that snow child they built is gone, but instead they start seeing footprints everywhere, and then they spot this young girl with like real skin, real hair and everything, and she's like hiding behind the trees, and she has this little red fox with her. And I think the implication of the story is that that child is the snow child that they created, but she doesn't live with them initially. She's like a child of the wilderness. Like, she lives in the woods, she knows how to hunt, and over time, the main couple of this book, the couple who are in their 50s who long for a child, they start to adopt her as one of their own, and they begin to love her, and it's just so, like, it's just so subtle, and it's so, like, it feels like such a small, intimate story, but there's so many big emotions just within it. And this book is The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. Her name is Eowyn, like the Lord of the Rings character, which I think is rad as hell. I also love the idea that love is something that can develop over time. You don't need to be connected to someone biologically to love them. And this book just felt enchanting to me. It felt magical to me. Okay, this next book might be a little basic. It's very, very popular, and I was debating whether or not to keep it in, but ultimately I decided yes, I'm gonna keep it in because this book has a lot to say about love. And let's just say that I might still be riding off the high of reading a certain prequel of a certain popular YA dystopian series that just came out. Now, this book is about a 16-year-old girl who lives in the remains of North America after climate change and nuclear war destroyed most of it and its inhabitants, and in a new country called Panem. So the country is divided into 12 districts and a capital. The districts specialize in trades such as manufacturing, coal mining, luxury items, technology, etc. Whereas the capital is like the government, and they're generally like the wealthiest group of people in Panem. Whereas the districts are left in poverty for the most part. Most of the people in the districts are struggling financially despite the fact that they provide all of these necessities and luxuries into the capital. In order to punish the districts for once rebelling against the capital decided to host, as you probably already know it, the Hunger Games to punish the districts for the rebellion against them. The Hunger Games is an annual event where a boy and a girl aged somewhere between 12 and 18 are chosen and forced to fight to the death in an arena. Now, this book is about dictatorships, it's about propaganda, it's about government control, it's about war, but it's also very much about love. I think that The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins explores love in a way that's very intricate, as in it's not necessarily right in your face all the time, but you can definitely see it and you can definitely feel it. I think that when the movie came out back in 2012, it was branded as a love triangle. I think maybe to go off the hype that like Twilight brought because of its love triangle. And some people argue that it's not a love triangle or there isn't really much there. And I have to say, like, honestly, I think there is. I think there is a love triangle. You have to remember that in the Hunger Games, this is like entertainment for the people of the capital. And so they don't see the people who are actually in the games killing each other as actual people. They kind of just see them as entertainment. And so for the cameras, Katniss Everdeen, she plays off this like romance storyline with the male tribute from her district, Peeta Mellark, mostly just to like entertain the people of the capital. But back home she has a best friend named Gale who, you know, they survived their poverty together, they learned how to hunt together. And Katniss does struggle to figure out who she likes. But the thing is, like, even the love triangle in this series, it's so much more than who she simply has chemistry with, or like, it's not about what they look like or anything. Each of the boys that she's interested in represents her philosophy about war. One of them takes the more pacifist, altruistic route, whereas the other one is angry and he's like, no, we have to rebel, we have to fight. And for Katniss Everdeen, the main character, like, she was on survival mode for so long that she doesn't even want to think about love, she doesn't want to think about war, she doesn't want to think about anything. But ultimately, who she decides to be with, or the struggle between choosing between the two, has a lot to do with her own philosophies, and also the relationship that she had with her parents, but that's a whole other thing. I was thinking of even making a video about this because I just recently reread the entire trilogy and I have so many thoughts that I didn't catch the first time I read it, probably because the first time I read it I was 12. Now reading it again as an adult, I think there's a lot to say about love. Another thing is that this book is written in the first person and Katniss Everdeen is a very unreliable narrator. So she can't always verbalize to us how she feels about these boys or how she feels about anyone when it comes to love. She doesn't know how to verbalize that for herself. So obviously she's not going to tell us. The way that she reacts, the way that she feels, like, you have to read in between the lines to understand that and to capture that. Ooh, I'm pooped after that. This next book I read for the first time 10 years ago because I saw this quote floating around Tumblr. and I was like, oh my god. I think because at the time I was a teenager and I was really shy and I didn't know how to talk to boys, like I lived off of quotes like this. So this is a book about a 16 or 17-year-old girl who lives in a boarding school in Australia. Her mom left her on the side of the Jellicoe Road 6 years prior to the start of the novel, and she was taken care of by this woman named Hannah, until one day her caretaker Hannah also disappeared. Hannah leaves behind a manuscript, and Taylor, finding the manuscript, realizes that this story that Hannah was telling in the manuscript actually reveals a mystery about Taylor's own life, and the book is about Taylor trying to unravel that mystery to find out what happened. And I don't think I've ever read a book quite like this one, and that book is On the Jellicoe Road by Melina Marchetta. I want to say that the love that this book focuses on is found family. I don't want to reveal too much because I don't want to spoil it too much, but just the experience, like the journey of reading the book and realizing that so much of the book is love that comes out of grief and how love can still survive after so much grief. Now, this book has a 4.45 from 1.6 million ratings on Goodreads, and it twisted my heart. It's about a 15-year-old girl who lives in Afghanistan and about her life through the decades from, I believe, the 1960s to the early 2000s. She gets married off to a man who's 30 years older than her, and he is abusive, and he really restricts her life and the freedom that she's allowed to experience in her life. Her mother had her out of wedlock, and her father never truly claimed her. Even though he would visit her, he was more often than not neglectful, and her mother was very verbally abusive towards her. As I said before, her husband is a piece of shit, absolutely worst person in the world. And so Miriam, the main character, she's never experienced love before, never pure actual love, and she lived for decades of her life just like that, never really being truly loved. And you're always rooting for her, you always want her to be able to stand up for herself, to feel good about herself, but it's hard because of the life that she's lived. Until one day she starts to form this sisterhood, this friendship with her husband's second wife, who he also got married to under very, very questionable and downright awful circumstances. At first, Miriam, our main character, finds it really hard to form a good friendship with the other wife, but over time they start to be there for each other and to grow this very, very deep love for each other. It's the first time in Miriam's life where she experiences what it's like to be loved and loved back. Now, this book is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. It's just so gut-wrenching, so gut-wrenching. Oh my god, like, it's just so well paced and it's so well written. These characters go through the worst, like the absolute worst, and even through the worst, love still prevails. This final book is one of my all-time favorites. This is a really well-written, enchanting tale about two orphans, a boy and a girl, who grew up in the 1910s in a Montreal orphanage. These kids always had a super deep love for performance. They loved music, they loved the circus, they loved performing in front of people. They were entertainers. And they also had this like very deep love for each other, even as kids. As teenagers, they were separated and they were no longer part of the orphanage anymore, and they had to go their own separate ways and find their livelihoods elsewhere. But they also entered the Great Depression, so life was not great at all. These characters fall into drug addiction, sex work, organized crime to be able to get through. And even though there's a lot of dark topics at hand, they never lose their sense of whimsy. They never lose that enchanting feeling that sort of haunts this entire book, and they never lose this love for each other. And this book is The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill. I think about this book on the daily. Like, there's just something about those two characters, something so special about them. Oh, yeah, all I can say was that the book is enchanting. It's enchanting. Ultimately, what all these books have in common is the interconnectedness of love, and how love doesn't have to be the main point of your life or anyone's life or the life of these fictional characters. It's something that's always constantly interconnected through everything, through every genre, through every topic, through whatever these characters go through, but also through whatever we go through as human beings. I think all of us crave that feeling of love. Like, you want to feel like love is always going to be there no matter what. And sometimes you might have to find it and seek it out yourself. Sometimes you just kind of have to conjure it up out of you. But I feel like all these books offer such special depictions of love, and it teaches you something about it, and maybe even how to navigate it, even though I don't think as humans we're ever going to fully learn how to navigate it, even hundreds and thousands of years from now. we're gonna get more stories about love. We're still gonna have people pondering it, wondering about it. It'll keep going on and on and on, but isn't it such a great mystery? Isn't it just so magical? Anyway, I hope you liked this video, and if you did like it, you could click the like button or even subscribe to me if you want, because it'll boost the levels of dopamine in my body. Bye!